welcome back to Mountaineer Rants. Hey, I look a little different this time, don't I? I'm Terry. This is Paul. And by the way, he did call me his boy last week, but we're brothers. He's not my dad, just so you want to know. We're going to preview the Texas Tech game here coming up this Saturday.
Big game coming up. Texas Tech has beat us 4 years in a row. I wanted to give you a little background of who their people are. Their coach is Joey McGuire. He's only been there a year. Matt Wells, their previous coach, was fired in 2021 when he lost to Kansas. They fired him in the middle of the season. They brought in Joey. He finished the year 6-6. And the next year, his first full year, he went 8-5.
You know, he's a friend of Neal Brown. They've known each other from way back. And if you've watched him, any of his interviews and stuff, he's really a good guy. I don't really have any hatred for the guy or upset with, but this week I do because we're playing them.
Well, we're working on that. We're working up a big hatred for Texas Tech. He was prior. He's a babe. He was prior to this head coach job. He was an associate head coach at Baylor and coached outside linebackers. Prior to that, he coached in high school. So this is the highest he's ever been. He had a pretty good year last year.
He was on the staff of Dave Aranda, and Dave Aranda came in there to Baylor and got him all the way to the Big 12 championship game. So I mean, he's got some credentials, but he is still young.
He's a youngster. We ought to beat him here. Now, in his interview, the one if you've watched it, he said some nice things about Brown. He said some nice things about our win against Pitt. He said we have one of the best run games in the country. He said our defense is improved. He said we have to watch out for number 8. He didn't know Nico's number, but Nico is the backup quarterback that won last.
He is a redshirt freshman, so he might not, and he might have been afraid to say it because he might have screwed it up. So.
Yeah, that's true. He might have been afraid to mispronounce it. We don't worry about mispronouncing things here.
Not on Mountaineer Rants. No, we mispronounce them all day
You'll get it right, or we won't. That's how it works. His offensive coordinator is a fellow named Zach Kittley. He brought him in from Western Kentucky, where Kittley had some of the most prolific offenses in the FBS history.
Absolutely.
And then in 2022, he had Texas Tech averaging 300 passing yards per game last season and 34.2 points a game. They're a classic Big 12 offense. Throw the ball, move it quick, get it down the field. Not as much emphasis on the run, and outscore you.
And it's funny, and I was going to get into this, but I'll say it now. I equate it to Press Virginia in our basketball. And if you've watched West Virginia basketball in the past, we had Press Virginia, which was intense, in your face. It was go, go, go all the time. That's what their offense does. We're not huddling. We're coming up to the line. We're running another play. You better be ready. If you're tired, sorry, we're coming at you. We're coming at you. We're putting pressure on you with our offense.
And it's been a problem for the West Virginia deliberative process that always has to adjust and think about things. They've been messing us up, keeping us off balance.
Yes.
Well, Kittley and this outfit have continued it this year. This year, they're averaging not 300, but 271 yards through the air and 34.6 points per game. So they're right there. His offense has always passed the ball more than they ran it, and that's continued this year. We, by the way, are the exact opposites.
Yes.
You mentioned in our earlier discussion the Pitt game may have skewed it. But we run the ball 2 times more often than we pass it.
Which we only threw the ball, 9 times in the Pitt game. So I think it did skew those stats a little bit. But and that's not the balance you probably really want in college football. But we want to keep it, possess it, control it, and run the clock. They want to fast break it, run it, score, and go and get the ball back again.
And they've got the people to do that.
Completely different than last week. It's not 2 teams who want to fight it out in the corner. This is one guy wants to stick and move, and the other guy wants to just slow.
That's right. Pitt said we're going to physical and come right at you, and the Mountaineers out physical Pitt.
Yes, we did.
This team is going to say we're spraying it all over the field. We're going to run fast and quick, and you're going to have to catch up with us.
Yep.
Now, last year they went 8-5, and they won a bowl game against Ole Miss, 42-25. They had a rough start. They started against 5 5 of their first 6 games were against ranked opponents with a brand new coach. They finished that part 3-3, but they ended the year, and that included back-to-back losses to Baylor and TCU. But they ended the year beating Oklahoma and beating Ole Miss, and it was pretty impressive start for this coach.
Some of the preseason stuff this year had them in the top echelon of the Big 12. In fact, I've seen them as high as preseason ranked number 3 behind Oklahoma and Texas.
And there's a couple of reasons for that. They've got seniors. They've got a veteran quarterback.
Yes,
they've got a veteran running back who we'll get to that in a second. But anyway, last year then, they had some weaknesses, though, and you didn't see it with the high-scoring game. I thought their offensive line was weak last year.
Agreed.
They allowed 41 sacks. That was 116th in the nation.
However, that could be skewed because they run so many plays with their fast tempo, and they throw the ball
more
so
passing.
much,
You get
so there's more opportunities to sack the quarterback. But just devil's advocate here.
I thought their offensive line, their pass blocking ranked 77th out of 131 teams, so that's right in the middle. And their run blocking ranked 114th out of 131 teams. So I thought their offensive line was below average last year.
I agree with you.
And because they didn't want to run. Now, 4 of those 5 offensive line starters are back. They've plugged in fact, this guy Kitley brought over from Western Kentucky a 6'5", 320-pound center and a 6'4", 300-pound guard. I don't know if they're starting or not, but
isn't it interesting that an offensive coordinator brings linemen? Most of the time, an offensive coordinator like Graham Harrell will bring in JT Daniels, skill players.
Yep.
So I thought that was very interesting.
He knows his stuff.
Yeah.
He knows he needs a better line. Their offense also added a guy named Dre McCray, number 10. You want to watch him. He's a wide receiver from Austin Peay.
He's pretty good.
And West Virginia tried to get him. He went to Texas Tech. They added a wide receiver, Jaron Bradley,
and
number 9.
Real good. He's real good.
He's voted by some media people as first-string All-American, all Big 12.
All Big 12, yeah. He's real good. They have as good as receivers as anybody in the conference. If you as a group, I think, without doubt.
And their Cadillac is the running back number 28, Taj Brooks. He had 855 combined rushing and receiving yards and 8 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And
ran all over us last year.
He's been said by Brown to be maybe the best running back in the Big 12 that nobody notices.
He does. Brown even said he's got a future in the NFL. He's going to be in the NFL, and he probably will. The way he can run the ball, the way he can catch the ball, he's just what the NFL is looking
Number
for.
28, Taj
Number 28, Taj Brooks.
Now, last year their defense had an all-conference pass rusher named Tyree Wilson. Yeah. He's gone to the NFL.
He was good too. Yeah, he was real good.
They also had their top tacklers were Krishawn Merriweather and Kofi Eldridge. They lost those to graduation. Between those 3 on defense, they had 263 tackles and 12 sacks. So the defense, which I think was average last year, had to do some rebuilding.
Yep.
They also have a defensive lineman, number 95, Jalen Hutchins, who may be their best overall lineman on either side of the ball. He's the highest rated defensive player. He's 6 foot, 305 pounds. He is now on this game is his 50th consecutive start.
It is interesting. With the COVID and all that went on, these guys can play that. But, we've got linemen on our team that have played. I don't know if they've gotten 50, but we're up there.
50 is a lot. If you're into the number of snaps and all of that nonsense, then this boy's got it. And he's good. But I think he's surrounded by a fairly weak defense. They've got edge players, number 6, Miles Cole, and number 7, Steve Linton, they're both average or above average. But other than that, in my opinion, their defense is their weak point.
The biggest concerning thing with Texas Tech, in my mind, is the fact that they are a veteran team. They have got a lot of upperclassmen on their
9
team.
seniors among the starters, 3 juniors, so 18 out of the 22 starters have played at least 4 years of ball.
Yeah, and see, we can't say that same thing. Now our offensive line can, but we're all over the map when it comes in our skill positions.
We're younger.
Yeah, well, with a running back, CJ 1 year, and then Nico or Garrett, either one. Anyway.
But I will say they've been average again this year. The defenses gave up 25.3 points per game, although they held the opponents to 3.9 yards per carry. Their secondary is a concern. I think they're a coverage secondary.
No doubt.
I don't think they're a tackling secondary. I think if we get the ball to the tight end, or if we get our running back through the line, I think you'll find that we gain some extra yards. Against Oregon, they gave up 32 completed passes.
Yeah, they did. But Oregon's pretty good. Oregon's top
pretty good.
15 team. And then the embarrassing thing was probably they lost to Wyoming, but they did lose to Wyoming in overtime.
Their first game was a loss in
Wyoming.
double overtime at Wyoming. They had a lightning delay. They missed 3 field goals.
Yeah.
One hit the post, one was blocked, and one was just a miss. Although their little kicker Garcia, they will send him out there to kick a deep one.
He can kick it a long way.
They'll send him out for a 56, 58-yard field goal, and he can kick it that far. Shuck,
The
their quarterback,
Tyler Shuck, number 12.
Tyler, it's spelled Shao, but it's pronounced Shuck. He spread the ball around in that Wyoming game. He threw it to Bradley, Price, and York. All 3 had touchdowns. He averaged 10 yards per reception, closer to 11. They had 7 penalties, 1 interception, and they only had the ball for 26 minutes. They lost it in double overtime, and I think Texas Tech folks thought they should have won that game.
That's the one that they point to because they thought they should have won that game. Again, Oregon was at home when they played Oregon, but Oregon I think was number 13 in the country.
Oregon was
they
a
were
ranked
up there,
game, yeah.
and so they understood, and that was a tight battle too. But they didn't feel like they should have lost that game to Wyoming.
Now,
but we watched that game, and Wyoming played really well.
Wyoming played well in that game. Now the storyline on Oregon was that Shuck had played at Oregon and transferred out, and he was going back to play against Bo Nix as their quarterback. He again spread the ball around. I saw some of that game. There were a bunch of interceptions, but Shuck wasn't the stats make him look worse than he was. One of his interceptions, at least one, was tipped and run back by another lineman. And another interception was the Hail Mary at the very end of the game that they put it down, but he had no other choice. They were up by 9 points late in the
third quarter, 27-18. They were up in that game and looking like they were going to win. Oregon
took the lead with a field goal with 1 minute and 10 seconds to go, 31-30. Shuck had them coming down the field again, threw the ball. It was tipped. Another defender caught it, ran it back the other way, and put in it for 7. So now they're 8 points behind. And Shuck brought them back again about midfield and threw a Hail Mary, but time just ran out on them. So another very close play. Oregon had 14 penalties, including a lot of pass interferences. Oregon hurt themselves, and while I think Oregon was a better team, I think they could have won that game too.
I'm going to give you a little anomaly about Texas Tech. It's something that you got to think about when we watch the game Saturday. They've got this guy, Taj Brooks, who's a really good running back, and I think that if it's me, I'd give it 20, 25 times a game. But who has attempted the most runs on their team? And it's Tyler Shuck. He's carried the ball 44 times. Taj Brooks has only carried it 37 times. So Shuck throws it and runs it. He's like a one-man show. And
he gained 100 yards rushing.
Yeah.
Their quarterback got 100 yards rushing in the Oregon game against a ranked team.
Yeah.
So if he looks downfield and we've got everybody covered, he's running. That's why this is going to be a game about linebackers.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with
Mr.
you.
Koba, I expect you to step up in this one.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, this game is going to come down to this, and I don't know if you're at the end of the info or want to
Not quite. Let me finish. Next they went to Tarleton. They played, that was their cupcake. Yeah. Morton got some playing time. They only had 2 penalties. They looked pretty good in that game. But Tyler Shuck, number 12, and number 2, B.
I don't know how you say it.
Morton, are the 2 quarterbacks that are now in controversy because they're mad. The fans and a lot of people are saying that they want Morton in.
And on that note, Morton played against West Virginia last year, threw for 300 and some yards against us, and of course they beat us 48-10. It was really
He beat us bad. They ran well. They routed us in Lubbock 48-10. and he had 325 yards passing and 2 touchdowns from Morton. But Morton has only gotten in when Shuck was hurt.
Right.
And that's his only starting, and then they want him, they think he's more of a gunslinger. It's true that Shuck has only had 2 games where he's completed more than 65% of his attempts. But McGuire says Shuck is going to be the starter. Morton's not coming in.
He flat out said it. He said McGuire said Shuck is the starter and it's not Morton, and he put it to rest. I mean, so is he playing coy and we might see Morton?
I think they're lucky enough to be deep at quarterback, because I think Morton's a pretty good backup quarterback, and if Shuck goes down, I don't think we can take our foot off the pedal. They've got some other players to talk about. One of course, is Taj Brooks. One of them is Jordan Brown. Yeah. He's had 6 receptions. He was a Kansas transfer. That's number 4. Yeah. They've got a guy in number 11 whose name I can't pronounce. Loic, Loic Fonuni, Founji. He's one of the regular receivers. He's got great hands. We talked about Bradley. Number 9, Jaron Bradley is 6'5", a 220-pound sophomore.
He's good.
He's already has 744 receiving yards last year and 17 catches for 211 yards this year and 2 touchdowns. I don't want to see him matched up with Beanie.
You better find out where he is on the field, and if he catches it, you better hit him.
Yeah. On the defense, their safety, number 1, is Dadrian Taylor Demerson. He's a converted running back, a 5th-year senior, and he's very high on the team.
Isn't it interesting that he's a converted running back playing safety? I thought that was interesting. Yeah. Where is your value? Well, they probably recruit a lot of running backs, and well, we need somebody over safety. We'll get one of those guys from over there. Put him in at safety. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it's just odd to take a running back to put him over to safety. I just don't. Although we took Davis Mallinger from safety and put him in a wide receiver, but he's not very good. So anyway, forgive me.
Mr. Malik Dunlap is their cornerback. He leads the team with 2 interceptions. That's number 24. I mentioned Miles Coles. He's had 2 sacks. He's one of the edge rushers. He's number 6. And then in the line, C.J. Baskerville, number 9. He's already had 6 tackles and 2 pass breakups.
The hound of the Baskerville.
Yeah. Texas Tech is ranked high in special teams. Blocks, punt returns, and punt return defense is ranked pretty high. And so if it comes to special teams, the edge, the field goals and the like, we've only kicked 1 field goal.
Yeah,
we made it.
And he just hooked it in that Pitt game. That worries me a little bit, because if this game is as even as I think it might be, it might come down to special teams. So we'll see. Then
I've got a little trivia, unless you... Tyron Bradley, our ball player, is from Lubbock, Texas.
He's from Lubbock, Texas, number 8. He's a ball player, too. Got the big sack in the Pitt game. The one, and you see it if they're running on a loop on some of the videos, the one that ended it, and that was Bradley got that sack. Anyway,
and then there's another connection. Tyler Shuck is from Chandler, Arizona. He played at Hamilton High School in Chandler, Arizona. Nico had been in Aurora, Colorado his sophomore and freshman year. Then he moved to Chandler, Arizona, and he finished at Hamilton High School in Chandler, Arizona. Now, Shuck would have been gone by the time Nico got there, but if you see the 2 of them after the game shaking hands, and that's not just being coy, they went to the same high school.
We're brothers, and we didn't even go to the same high school. So, I mean, in fact, there was kind of a rivalry. I was Grafton, he was West Fairmont, but that's another story.
I've been all over.
Here's what this is coming down to. This is a very evenly matched game. It's a different style. It's not Pitt, West Virginia, who's the most physical. They're going to fast break, and we want to control it and beat them. We've got to get the ball. I'm a broken record this. We got to run it, and we got to get the ball. And if we can get some turnovers, and we got to stop that fast break offense. And in my opinion, you've got to stop it on the first series. You got to get a 3 and out, because if you get that, they get an initial first down, then they can start doing things.
They scored like 45 points in the first quarter. They started.
They won it, and we don't start fast. And that's the first quarter will tell the tale. We'll see what happens.
Now, before I make my prediction, I wanted to note a couple of comments. Some of the ones that have written in, RJ says, loved your show last week. Terry never looked better, but I think he looks a little pale. SM says, Terry, I've got a blackboard that's similar to you. Maybe you guys could get together. And then TG says, I thought Terry was a little down in the mouth. He should smile more last week.
Well, been a little bug going around. Thankfully, I'm get on camera now. But thank y'all for watching.
In 2019, I went up to Morgantown to watch the football game with Texas Tech. It was the first year that Neal Brown played Texas Tech. We had Jared Daggy as the quarterback, and they ran all over us. We couldn't get things to work. When we couldn't get any momentum, we'd throw an interception, we'd fumble the ball, we'd miss a coverage, and they'd strike from long distance. The game was over by halftime. When it was cold and it was wet and it was raining. By the way, I met a number of Texas Tech fans, very nice people. Of course, they could afford to be. They were beating the hell out of us. Yeah.
It's like when we went up in Iowa State, beat our behinds. Yeah. Iowa State people were nice, but moving on.
But after that game, Neal Brown had a special press conference, and because I saw him come out in about the third quarter, and he looked up, and there were no Trans fans there.
Yeah.
The fans were there. It was cold. It was wet. We were being beat, and the upper deck had literally hundreds, maybe thousands of fans in it as we stuck it out. Neal Brown looked up, and he was touched. He came out and gave a speech after the game, and he said, I've noticed it. I appreciate it. I promise you we're going to be a successful program for these fans. I think that was one of his first steps towards being a Mountaineer. I think his other one came in the Pitt game. I think he staged another one. Well, so far he hasn't fulfilled that promise because Texas Tech have beat our tails 3 years in a row. I think this year it changes. I think this is a together team. I think it plays as a team. I think they're focused. And while I think if I had to put it on paper that Texas Tech may be the better team, I think we get them this year. I think we run the ball through their line and score. I think we pass the ball past their line with the tight ends and score. And I don't only think we win, I think we win big. That's my prediction.
I'm a little bit concerned when you're that confident. I will say this, but I do think we'll win this game, and I think we will win it by possessing the ball and running the ball at them and limiting their possessions and then getting the turnovers. If it comes down to special teams, I'm really worried, but I don't think it will. I think we win this one.
If they beat us bad, you may see 2 whiteboards here next week.
Thank you all for watching. Come and watch us when we do the review of this game next week.
I liked it better with the whiteboard. You were much nicer to me.
Well, I had much more personality when I'm a whiteboard rather than just me sitting
there. You didn't screw it up.
The whiteboard doesn't move its hands.